Chapter 455. After the banquet, the people of Ding General Manor hurriedly left, which seemed even more abnormal. When she looked at Sun Yijiao again, there was a trace of pity in her eyes. God was indeed fair. No matter what, there would always be something unsatisfactory. In this way she felt more or less balanced in her heart. Others would not care about the abnormality of the people of Ding General Manor, but Jingwan would not ignore it. However, she believed that her husband could also think of what she could think of. Therefore she did not need to do anything. Jingwan thought of another thing. At the birthday banquet she once suspected that old Madame Sun was responsible for the resurrection. However, she did not find out anything. Therefore the source of the resurrection was still unclear. Jingwan considered the possibility of directly starting with old Madame Sunday. Her eyes fell on Sun Yijia. Perhaps she could ask her best sister-in-law to take her little niece to see old Madame Sun? However, everyone was smart. There were some things that could be roughly understood without being explained clearly. In this way there might be a little more exposed. No matter how close old Madame Sun was to the Empress and Prince Kong, they were still her biological daughter and grandson. If she didn't support them, she probably wouldn't do anything to harm them. Thinking about it this way, was the source of her resurrection also wrong? Also, was it wise to involve her best sister-in-law? Jingwan thought for a while. Sun Yijiao noticed it. She looked back and said with a chuckle, Princess consort, what's the matter? It was obvious that her mood was not affected by those sisters-in-law. Jingwan shook her head gently. Nothing. I just thought of something and was a little absent-minded for a while. After all, there were so many guests. They still had to pay attention to what they should pay attention to. Naturally, the two of them could not be as intimate as arm in arm. Even so, they were much more casual than others. As time went by, the guests also left one after another. Those who stayed behind were basically close friends. Sun Yijia had nothing to do for the time being. He could have some time to talk with Jingwan. However, before she could go to Jingwan's side, the maid told her that her father was looking for her. Oh yes. The women of Ding General Manor left, but the men outside sat steadily. At this time, Sun Yijiao knew that her father had put on the airs of a father-in-law in front of her husband. In front of so many guests, he put himself on a high pedestal. Sun Yijiao felt deep hatred in her heart. A qualified father-in-law, even if his son-in-law had some problems, would privately correct him. In front of others he would not praise or support him, but at least give him face. Of course, if he was completely unreliable, then forget it. Her husband was not perfect, but he was definitely a good man. He was filial, respectful, kind to his brothers and sisters, and cared for his wife and children. He was ambitious and had a good temper. Under normal circumstances, when meeting such a son-in-law, one would be smiling from ear to ear. However, it was obvious that her parents did not belong to this kind of normal situation. Sun Yijia went to see her father expressionlessly. Her impression of her father was 10 times or 100 times worse than her mother's. This was especially so after she married into the Luo family. With the Luo family as a comparison, this feeling was even more obvious. Her father-in-law was not a good father, nor was he a good husband. He seemed to be calm and collected, but in fact he was more irresponsible in pursuing his own interests. Of course, this was the old him. However, in Sun Yijia's opinion, even so, he was better than her father. Moreover, now her father-in-law was changing. He was working hard to change himself for the sake of his family. Her father was still the same. He was sinking deeper and deeper into his original path. He did not think of turning back. Or perhaps he did not realize his mistakes at all. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. How could she have such parents? Gradually, she suppressed her anger. She was very lucky to have such parents, wasn't she? Jingwan saw Sun Yijia approaching and then walking away. Then she knew what was going on. The High Duke's public house had been neutral for thousands of years. Should she say that this was a matter of course, in accordance with the law of prosperity and decline, or should she feel a little sad? After all, as the current Duke of Dingwa, he actually had an unshirkable responsibility for the High Duke's public house's current state. Some things and some decisions were wrong from the beginning. At this moment there were no outsiders around Jingwan. However, there was a figure sneaking behind her. It seemed like she wanted to scare Jingwan. However, Jingwan was guarded by people around her. How could she let her have her way? After Jingwan received the hint, she turned around and smiled. Cousin. Yuan Qiao greeted her politely. Then she sat down beside Jingwan. Jingwan came to the Luo family to participate in Sister Xian's catchment week. After that she stayed in the Haitang Inn with Li Hongyuan. She basically had no contact with other people. During the banquet, those who were close to her were not qualified to sit next to her because of the seating arrangement. Yuan Xiaoqiao came up to her at this time, but she looked tired. Yuan Xiaoqiao had always been a cheerful and lively girl. Although she restrained herself a little after getting married, she was still in high spirits every time she saw her. It was rare to see her like this. "Cousin, what's wrong?" Jingwan asked. "What's wrong? It's because of the child. We have been married for almost half a year now, but we haven't gotten pregnant. Because of grandfather and you, my mother-in-law doesn't dare to put another person into our house for the time being. But I think it will be soon. It seems that she has already chosen one from her beautiful and fertile maids." The conflict between wives and concubines, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, was never a pleasant topic. Jingwan frowned slightly. This kind of thing could be handled, but it was also not good. To some extent, the governor's wife did not do anything wrong because many people were like this. Moreover, she was not mean to her daughter-in-law. In some aspects she was very good to her daughter-in-law. If she came to her house just because she wanted to give her son a concubine, it would be too overbearing. It would not make sense, especially when her cousin did not have a child. Although half a year was not a long time, it was not short in some people's eyes. If she did this kind of thing within 3 months, she might be criticized. The most important thing was that Jingwan could not instill some of her thoughts into her. If she was immature, then it would be neither fish nor fowl. In that way it might be counterproductive and make her cousin live more painfully. Moreover, she might not have the ability to bear all of this. Rather than this, it was better to let her be like other women. As long as she was alive, her husband's family would not go too far. Every era had its own characteristics. Even if there were unreasonable things, it was difficult to change with one person's strength. Especially in her current position, she could not do anything easily. Therefore this matter was really not easy to solve. For the time being, Jingwan could only comfort her. However, it was obvious that Yuan Xiaoqiao was not so weak because her husband was still on her side. Therefore, when facing Jingwan, she could put aside her unhappiness. "Cousin, how good would it be if I married cousin Jingbua? Why am I not so lucky to meet such a good husband and reasonable in-laws?" Jingwan, who was in a bad mood because of her just now, choked in an instant. "If you have the ability, say this in front of your cousin-in-law and see how she reacts." Yuan Xiaoqiao's expression changed. "I'm just joking. I've never thought about cousin Jingbua at all. In the past, I didn't know that he was such a good man. Now I'm just looking forward to meeting someone like him. Cousin, don't talk nonsense. If cousin-in-law really misunderstands, she will fall out with me easily. I'm afraid she will eat me alive." She looked scared. Jingwan sneered. "Cousin, you still don't have a filter on your mouth. If someone heard what you said, or if they didn't hear the whole thing, they would make all kinds of speculations. Who knows how big of a mess it will cause." Yuan Xiaoqiao also knew that what she said just now was not very nice. She looked a little embarrassed. "While you're sitting here, there are so many people around. How can you sleep and eavesdrop? You can always trust the people around you." Jingwan was also helpless. Although Yuan Xiaoqiao did not feel good, she did not dwell on this matter. Sun Yijia came back faster than expected, but she did not look too good. After sitting down, she fiercely turned off a cup of tea. Jingwan and Yuan Xiaoqiao looked at each other and did not speak. Chapter 456. Do you know why they are looking for me? They want the Luo family's support. They want me to talk to my grandfather. If I don't help them, they are heartless, unfilial, cold-blooded, and selfish. If I don't help them, they are saying that Jingbo is heartless and unrighteous. He doesn't care about the Yu family. If he treats his own family this way, who knows how ruthless he will be when he enters the bureaucracy in the future. Sun Yijiao lost control as she spoke. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. How can they be so shameless? But if it was just her, Sun Yijiao wouldn't be so angry. After all, it wasn't the first time. She had already given up on them. It would be best if they had nothing to do with each other. However, they were so despicable. They wanted to ruin Jingbo's reputation and threaten her with Jingbo's future. Sun Yijia exploded at that moment. She didn't hide her hatred anymore. At that moment she really wanted to kill them with her own hands. How could they be her family? They were obviously her sworn enemies. Who do they think I am? God? I am just one of the granddaughters-in-law of the Minister of Personnel Affairs. Do you think I can influence the decisions of a first-rank official? Were they out of their minds or something? How can they say such idiotic things? In front of her two best friends, Sun Yijia did not restrain her emotions at all and completely vented them out. Her eyes were filled with bone-deep hatred and her expression was deranged. The beautiful makeup on her face made her look even more ferocious. The veins on her neck and the back of her hands were clearly visible. She no longer had the refined bearing of a noble lady. The emotions in Jingwan and Yuan Qiaoqiao's eyes were indescribable. The people who forced her to this extent should have been the people who cared for her the most. They should have been her most reliable support. In the end, they only hurt her time and time again. They cut her flesh and let her blood flow. They gnawed at her heart, messed up her life, and destroyed her happiness. Yuan Qiaoqiao was at a loss. She didn't know what to say. At the same time, she felt a little sad. Although the Yuan family wasn't very rich, the whole family was happy. Her parents were wholeheartedly considerate of her. Her grandfather was in a high position, and the people in the family didn't force her mother to ask for benefits from her grandfather. Although there was a little trouble in her husband's family, it was really nothing. Jingwan didn't say anything and let Sun Yijia vent her emotions first. It was best to let it out. If she kept it in, Jingwan still remembered how her sister-in-law looked like when she first met her. She was the most beautiful flower, but inside she had already withered without any vitality. It was heartbreaking to look at her. Jingwan was very clear that although the Luo family didn't have any opinions about her sister-in-law and the elders were very good to her, if Ding General Manor kept making trouble like this, even if it wasn't her fault, gradually they would have a bad opinion of her. This was human nature. No matter how deep the love was, it couldn't stand the torment. However, Jingwan thought more in her heart. Because her grandfather was unmoved by force and persuasion, no one could do anything to him. Sun Yijia was like an abandoned child to Ding General Manor. The relationship between the two families existed in name only. Everyone was happy and relaxed. But now Ding General Manor suddenly came to her door. What was the reason? Was it really so difficult for Prince Kang's side without the Empress? The Empress was ambitious, but she shouldn't be so weak in control. However, it was also possible that Prince Kang had been poached and some people who originally supported him had changed sides. Duke Dinghua looked for Sun Yijia to talk to her. It did seem very stupid, but it wasn't very thorough. Because rather than threatening Sun Yijia, it was better to say that he was threatening Luo Peishan. Although Luo Jingbo was a virgin, he was now famous. No one of his peers in the whole capital could surpass him. He had a bright future and might be the backbone of the Luo family in the future. Luo Peishan naturally didn't want such a grandson to be ruined. In this way, Luo Peishan might give in to Ding General Manor. If it were another family, Sun Yijia might have been divorced, so she was the most pitiful and innocent. After venting, Sun Yijia became incomparably disheartened. Sister-in-law, don't be like this. Grandfather will solve this matter. Don't worry. Grandfather will solve it? How can I have the face to tell? Sun Yijia's voice stopped abruptly. Because of anger, hatred, and emotional loss of control, she realized that she had made such a big fuss at that time. How could it not attract the attention of her grandfather and grandmother? Now they probably knew everything. Yes, her father didn't stop her at all at that time. He didn't use his father's identity to suppress her. He just looked a little angry. It turned out that he did it on purpose with such an idea. Sun Yijia twitched the corners of her mouth and showed an extremely ugly smile. She was even a little discouraged. So what if she was born in a noble family? Such a family, such a family. So what if she was lucky and happy? Such a family, such a family. Sooner or later, everything would be destroyed. In fact, Sun Yijia's matter could be completely solved, but it was very difficult and even impossible to do so. They didn't know how to comfort her and the atmosphere fell into silence. A maid from the Luo family hurried over. Princess Consort, third young madam, great aunt, someone from the palace said that the emperor has bestowed something. Master asked us to go to the front to receive the imperial edict. Although the maid was a little out of breath, her tone and expression were full of excitement. This news made Sun Yijia's depressed mood slightly better. The three of them looked at each other. Although it was a little strange that the emperor had bestowed something on Sister Xian's first birthday, it still made sense if they wanted to explain. When they arrived, almost everyone in the residence was present. Jingwan walked straight to Li Hongyuan, who was at the front, and squatted down. Your Highness. Li Hongyuan, who was originally a little lazy, didn't say anything and reached out to help her up. The eunuch who came to announce the imperial edict saw this and hurriedly bowed to pay his respects. He was very respectful. Jingwan smiled faintly and nodded. Everyone was present and everyone knelt together to receive the imperial edict. From the imperial edict, it could be seen that this time, rather than saying that it was for Sister Xian, it was better to say that it was for Luo Jinghua. It made people feel baffled and unable to make sense of it. However, Jingwan and Li Hongyuan looked at each other and understood that it was because of that portrait of the imperial Guifei. Because of the birth of Luo Jinghua's meticulous brushwork, that painting was born. It's just that Jingwan wanted to roll her eyes. This reaction arc was a bit too long. After all, when the Yellow Emperor wanted to reward someone, he could casually find a reason. If there was no reason, there was no problem. It was up to him to be happy. Therefore, at this time it made people feel baffled. However, since Jin Qinhuang said that it was fine and Luo Shangshu also received it as a matter of course, everyone didn't take it seriously. Only Sun Yijia had something on her mind. She felt that she had let down the elders of the Luo family, especially the head of the family, Luo Peishan. She brought trouble to him. At the same time, she was perturbed and worried that the peace and happiness of the past would be gone forever. Jingwan couldn't bear to watch anymore. She pulled on old Madame Luo's arm and gently pushed it. She pouted at Sun Yijia. You all. Old Madame Luo was also helpless. Seeing Sun Yijia like that, she sighed and waved at her. Sun Yijia took half a beat to react. She hurriedly walked over. Grandmother. Old Madame Luo patted her hand. It's okay, don't think too much. Today is Sister Xian's birthday. As a mother, you have a worried face. If the child sees it, wouldn't she be affected? Sun Yijia's tears fell and she hurriedly wiped them away with a handkerchief. Grandmother. Okay, you young people talk. Old Madame Luo went back to the rear courtyard. Jingwan smiled and winked at Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia didn't know how to thank Jingwan. She knew very well in her heart that the Luo family had accepted her so well from the beginning. It was all because of little sister Wan. Until now, little sister Wan had always been helping her. Let's go, let's go. Jingwan pulled Sun Yijia and went straight to the rear courtyard. Li Hongyuan watched as Jingwan left again. She had no intention of leaving the Luo family and returning to the prince's estate. He frowned, but in the end he didn't stop her. He also knew that Jingwan had deep feelings for her maiden family. Forget it, it wasn't easy for her to come back even once. However, Jingwan wouldn't really leave Li Hongyuan alone. If she left him alone for too long, he might fall ill again. After staying for 2 hours, Jingwan went to say goodbye to old Madame Luo. Coincidentally, Madame Zhang was also there. She seemed to be talking about her younger sister's marriage. That younger sister was only 1 year younger than her. It was indeed time for her to find a husband. Wan, you're here. Just in time, come and listen. Old Madame Luo waved at Jingwan. There were indeed a lot of people who wanted to marry Luo Jingyu. However, they were all aiming for the Luo family's power. Regardless of how Luo Jingyu was in the Luo family, they wanted to climb up the Luo family's social status first. In any case, they would have to marry a wife. With the Luo family's style, even if it was a concubine's daughter, it wouldn't be too bad. No matter how they looked at it, they wouldn't lose out. The previous candidates weren't very satisfactory. It's just that today the Xia family wants to arrange a marriage. The Xia family? Since her grandmother directly said the Xia family, there wouldn't be a second choice aside from the aristocratic Xia family. Which son of the Xia family is it? Based on her understanding of her grandmother, she definitely wouldn't just take a fancy to the Xia family. She should have taken a fancy to the son of the Xia family who was going to marry into the Luo family. Naturally, she was curious about who the other party was. However, for such an aristocratic family to marry into the Luo family, it probably wouldn't be a very important person. Although it wasn't like the previous dynasty, the status of aristocratic families was very high. Ordinary sons of concubines had to be picky, and those sons of the first wife wouldn't marry the concubine's daughter of an official's family. Chapter 457. You know, it was Xie Renhui who entered the Honglu temple because of you. Jingwan was surprised. Then she thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. The Honglu temple was in charge of foreign guests. Under normal circumstances, it was difficult for them to achieve much. However, when envoys from other countries came or went, the Honglu Temple would play a very important role. People who were proficient in the languages of other countries and foreign countries were indispensable. Xie Renhui, from the letter of credence to the reception of the envoys from other countries, and even the friendly diplomatic relations at the end, had picked out the language traps set by some people with ulterior motives more than once. As a result, the Qi Yuan was always in an invincible position. Therefore his contributions were not small. When the envoys left, Emperor Lu Qingdi was very happy. Then he did not jump 3 times in a row but 5 times in a row. There were also other rewards. Xie Renhui was still not prominent in the entire officialdom. However, no one who entered the officialdom at the same time as him, including his elder brother who was the top scholar. Xie Renhui was born of a concubine, so he thought that he had the blood of a different clan. Even if his official mother did not treat him harshly, he was still a nobody in the Xie clan. But now, although he was far from being valued by the entire clan, his branch would definitely not ignore him. She did not know why he wanted to arrange a marriage for the Luo family. Jingwan asked her question. He didn't say anything specific. Besides, it was Xie Renhui's official mother who asked your mother. Don't you know what kind of person your mother is? Even if other people had a deeper meaning, she would not be able to understand. Madame Luo said bluntly. Madame Zhang was ashamed. Although it was not the first time that her mother-in-law said this, she still blushed in front of her daughter. She stole a glance at Jingwan and found that Jingwan was drinking tea with her head lowered as if she did not hear anything. She then covered her ears and stole a bell. She then covered her ears and stole a bell. She then pulled her handkerchief and pretended to be dumb. If this marriage is successful, it's not a bad thing. There won't be any bad implications. Grandmother and mother can do as you see fit. Jingwan thought for a while and did not ask about this matter anymore. After that, Jingwan bid farewell to Madame Luo and Madame Zhang. When the imperial prince and imperial consort left, everyone in the residence naturally had to send them off respectfully. In the carriage, Jingwan told Li Hongyuan about this matter. Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes as he looked at Jingwan. His expression was unfathomable. Facing Jingwan's puzzled gaze, he sneered. Jingwan was baffled by his crazy look. What else could it be? Xie Renhui is only in his current situation because of you, the talent scout. As the saying goes, a drop of water should be repaid with a spring. Moreover, this is equivalent to the grace of a new life. Even if he spends his entire life, he won't be able to repay it. When we got married, he brought people to support you. Now he wants to have a marriage alliance with the Luo family and marry your stepsister. What's so strange about that? Don't forget that because of you, your stepsister's reputation has been greatly affected. She has to bear the brunt of the marriage. Otherwise, your mother and the others would not have been unable to find a suitable candidate. What's so strange about him doing such a thing? Jingwan could naturally hear that something was wrong from his words. Then wasn't this jealousy a bit too unreasonable? However, knowing that he was unreasonable, Jingwan naturally did not lower herself to his level. Otherwise, this vinegar jar could turn into a vinegar jar in seconds. If there was more vinegar, it could drown her. Jingwan lazily leaned on him. What he thinks has nothing to do with me. As long as it doesn't have any negative impact on you and the Luo family, I naturally don't care about this kind of thing. Li Hongyuan's expression eased a little. After returning to the prince's residence, they continued to live leisurely. However, the next day there was shocking news from Duke Dinggua's mansion. Even Li Hongyuan was speechless for a long time. It was because old Madame's son, who had been living in seclusion, suddenly walked out of her courtyard and adopted son Yilin, leaving no room for discussion. And the person she adopted was the younger brother of the former Duke Dinggua, a person who died halfway before reaching the age of 20. It should be known that she had never thought of adopting a son for him, but now she adopted a grandson for him. What was even more incredible was that Sun Yijiao was also adopted by Sun Yilin. That was to say, his biological father became his uncle. As his uncle, his relationship with Sun Yilin and Sun Yijiao naturally became much weaker. If Duke Dinggua asked Sun Yijiao to do something again, it would be completely untenable. Old Madame Sun's move could be said to be cutting the firewood from under the cauldron. She used another way to cut off her relationship with Duke Dinggua's mansion without hurting Sun Yijiao and her child. There could only be one word to describe it: ruthless. Jingwan was a little stunned for a time. Sure enough, she didn't make a move, but once she made a move, it was like a thunderbolt. Chapter 458. Old Madame Sun was definitely a qualified official mother. Otherwise, how could the former Duke Ding leave so many concubine children behind? Not only that, but she also allowed them to continue to stay in the Duke's mansion and enjoy the honor of Duke Ding's mansion after the death of the former Duke Ding. It should be known that even if they were brothers in Duke Ding's mansion, it was absolutely different from outside. Naturally, some people were not convinced by this sudden change. Then they were beaten up by old Madame Sunday. These people probably forgot her nature and character because old Madame Sun had been eating vegetarian food and praying to Buddha for a long time and didn't have a strong sense of presence. In fact, old Madame Sun didn't mistreat those concubines' children. It was not for the sake of reputation, nor was it really virtuous and magnanimous. She just didn't care. Because she didn't care, she allowed them to exist. Therefore, at this time she didn't care about reputation. Moreover, after the death of the head of the family, it was normal to separate the concubines' children. No one could blame her for this. Duke Ding wanted to say something, but before he could say anything he was hit by old Madame Sun's cane. Many of his descendants were watching from the side. However, in the face of old Madame Sun's cold eyes, Duke Ding could only tremble and kneel obediently. He swallowed the words of objection that were about to come out of his mouth. Looking at his useless appearance, old Madame Sun's face became colder. Sometimes she wondered if this son and the daughter in the palace had switched genders. If this idiot was half as stupid as his sister, Duke Ding's mansion would be more than this. As for the daughter, only half was left. If she didn't have the desire for power, Duke Ding's mansion wouldn't be like this. When it came to the adoption of Sun Yilin, the happiest person was his eldest brother, Sun Yibin. The joy in his eyes couldn't be suppressed. Old Madame Sun's cane, which was taller than a person, waved again. Judging from the strength, if she hadn't died for a long time, Sun Yibin's leg would have been broken directly. You're worse than a beast. These few cold words seemed to carry the deepest malice. The complacency in Sun Yibin's eyes disappeared completely. His face was pale, his lips trembled, and his legs went soft. He also knelt on the ground. Grandmother, shut up. I don't want to listen to your chatter. It's so annoying. Sun Yibin's face was extremely ugly. If his grandmother's words were spread out, his reputation would be tarnished in a very short time, and he could not wash it clean. More importantly, he could not even think about the position of the heir of Ding General Manor. Not to mention that his father was dissatisfied with him now. Even if his father still supported him as before, it would be difficult for him to get what he wanted under the pressure of his grandmother. Moreover, the relationship between His Majesty and his grandmother seemed to be unusual. He believed that his grandmother could make him lose everything with just one word in front of His Majesty. Sun Yibin's heart was filled with hatred. He couldn't care less about anything else. He only wanted to change the current situation. Old Madame Sun was old and shrewd. She saw his expression and understood it clearly in her heart. She couldn't help sneering and scolding him in her heart. Sure enough, a dog can't change its habit. He never knew how to reflect on himself. Out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind, old Madame Sun turned directly back to her courtyard. As soon as the courtyard door was closed, two completely different worlds were formed inside and outside the wall. The wall, which was not as high as a mountain, was like an insurmountable moat. As for the people outside, without old Madame Sun's permission, those who were kneeling did not dare to get up, and those who were standing did not dare to leave because the head of the family could not leave. The uncle who had been driven out was the best example. They did not want to leave the protection of Ding General Manor. Therefore they were all scheming against each other a few days ago, but now they were all obedient. However, in the whole Ding General Manor, no one told Duchess Ding about the adoption of Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia. She didn't know whether it was because they had simply forgotten her or for some other reason. In fact, in the end, it wasn't that no one wanted to invite the Duchess of Ding out to make trouble for old Madame Sunday. It was well known that the Duchess of Ding cared about Sun Yilin. If she knew that her son was gone, she would really make a scene. However, no matter how much Duchess Ding did, she could be suppressed by old Madame Sun, who stood at the top. At that time, whoever invited Duchess Ding out would definitely be dealt with by old Madame Sunday. After seeing her thunderous means, this group of people naturally did not dare to stroke the tiger's whiskers. After hearing the follow-up, Jingwan couldn't help but sigh. Ah Yuan, do you think that if old Madame Sun had set the overall direction of Duke Dinghua's mansion from the beginning, would the current situation of Duke Dinghua's mansion be completely different? It would indeed be different, but it would be worse than it is now. In such a situation she still worked hard for Ding General Manor, the Sun family and even the Empress and Li Hongyi. Now the grass on her grave is deep. Because of her she can occasionally suppress Ding General Manor. But when she is gone, Ding General Manor has no shackles at all. Moreover, Ding General Manor is a grandfather, but he is still suppressed by his mother. How can he be happy? It's obvious that the things left by old Madame Sun and the people cultivated by her will be abolished by him for various reasons. Can Ding General Manor be better in his hands? Well, her husband was very reasonable. So, old Madame Sun had seen through the situation, so she left Ding General Manor to fend for itself? Or did she really not have a good impression of Ding General Manor, didn't care and didn't want to intervene at all? Probably only old Madame Sun herself could answer this question. Sun Yijia, who received the news, cried hard and kept shouting grandmother. She was not expelled from Ding General Manor, but she basically had nothing to do with Ding General Manor. What she once thought was impossible was achieved so easily. Sun Yijia felt that this was like a dream, but she clearly realized that this was definitely not a dream. Luo Jingbua sat next to her with Sister Xian in his arms. He didn't say anything, but in this way he told her that they would always be by her side and support her. Their family would always be happy. Seeing Sister Xian clumsily trying to wipe away her tears, Sun Yijia's heart softened. She hurriedly wiped away her tears, hugged Sister Xian in her arms and kissed her. Her heart relaxed, but there was also a trace of pain that was hidden very deep. As for Sun Yilin, who was still thousands of miles away, there was no way to know how he would react after learning about this matter. This matter affected not only the people of Ding General Manor. It should be said that everyone related to Ding General Manor was affected. To some extent, it could be said that it was even more serious than the people of Ding General Manor. After all, there were many people in Ding General Manor who were just idlers. In essence, this actually represented old Madame Sun's attitude on certain matters. She had painstakingly cultivated the younger generation for the sake of prosperity, but now the most promising one was sent away. The meaning behind this was simply too obvious. If the old lord of Ding General Manor had such an attitude, how would the people who relied on Ding General Manor feel? It was not that no one went to Ding General Manor to ask to see old Madame Sun, hoping that she could withdraw the order before the matter became a foregone conclusion. Even some elders of the Sun family came forward, hoping to persuade her with emotion and reason. Most of them, old Madame Sun didn't give them any face at all. She didn't even meet them. As for the one or two elders who did meet her, she was also cold and indifferent. She didn't say much. She probably meant one thing. What's wrong? There were people in the Sun family whose seniority was higher than old Madame Sun's, but in the face of such a powerful old Madame Sun, they could only be silent. After all, old Madame Sun was a superior madam, and the patriarch of the Sun family was Ding General Manor. If they really wanted to argue, they might not be able to suppress her with seniority. What's more, she was the mother of the Empress. A mother's identity could really be used to suppress others with filial piety. Even the emperor had to be obedient in front of his mother. The Empress was really nothing. It was human nature to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The actions of these people, on the contrary, sped up old Madame Sun's action. She didn't choose a good day but directly opened the ancestral hall, worshipped the ancestors and directly changed the family tree. In this way the matter was completely settled. From the beginning to the end, the Empress didn't send anyone to stop this matter, and Prince Kong didn't do anything. Obviously there was no room for recovery. The others also stopped, but it was hard to say what they thought in their hearts. However, very few people knew that the Empress's illness seemed to have worsened, and Prince Kong seemed to be irritable again. However, seeing that Luqingdi was also indifferent, some old officials who knew his temperament faintly felt that Luqingdi was actually happy to see this matter succeed. Many people were affected, more people were gloating, and more people were not affected. Li Hongyuan ordered that the investigation of old Madame Sun's matter could be suspended. Jingwan was somewhat puzzled, but she also seemed to have a sudden realization. What Li Hongyuan cared about now was Jingwan's birthday. On the second day of the second month, The first birthday after becoming a Qinhuang Fei. No matter what, it couldn't be perfunctory. It must be celebrated, and it must be celebrated on a grand scale. The grand celebration that Jin Qinhuang spoke of, could it be an ordinary grand celebration? When Jingwan heard these two words, she subconsciously wanted to refuse. If it wasn't for some taboo, Jingwan didn't doubt that he could make it more grand than the emperor's birthday celebration. But now, even if it didn't reach that level, it definitely wouldn't be that bad. If it was done, it would be flaunting his wealth again and drawing hatred again. Jingwan hesitated, but when she met Li Hongyuan's gaze that seemed to see through everything, and it was also cold, it was obvious that he rejected her idea. Thus, the words that were at the tip of her tongue were swallowed back. Generally, a psychopath wouldn't take her seriously. If he took her seriously, it was simply asking for her life. Therefore, if he really made up his mind, it was best not to go against him. Okay, as long as you're happy. That's right, Yuan, can an E get married? https://1180711807/10319903. Chapter 459. What? You want to marry one of your maids to him? Since 3 years ago, an E basically didn't go out on a mission. He just completely changed to the light. Li Hongyuan's performance was quite straightforward. Anyway, he had a lot of people under his command. Even if it was a secret guard, it didn't have any impact if there was one less capable in E. His wife just wanted someone, how could he not give it to her? With Jiao as a precedent, it didn't matter even if his wife's maids chose husbands from the secret guards. Jingwan laughed. It's not like that. It's just that Yi's heart was moved. Because of his identity, he restrained himself and didn't show it much. When he faced the person he liked, he would still reveal a little bit of himself. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows slightly. Obviously, he was a little surprised. The secret guards had undergone special training. Their biggest characteristics were strong ability, loyalty, and indifferent feelings. Of course, indifference didn't mean that they had no feelings. It was normal for them to suddenly have some thoughts. The person he likes also likes him. His wife was very good to the maids who served her. If it was purely his people who had thoughts, his wife probably wouldn't have asked him. Therefore, it wasn't unreasonable for the people around him to want to please the mistress. It's Baishao. Baishao is calm and capable. Probably because of Sister He, she's more introverted in personal feelings. I thought that she would probably be the last to understand, or that she would need me to choose a marriage for her. It's best to solve it yourself. Li Hongyuan's tone was a little cold. Jingwan naturally understood what he meant. If he wanted her to worry about them, this man would be narrow-minded again. Maybe he wouldn't treat those maids who were originally afraid of him with disdain. In his heart, he would only be satisfied if she put her mind on him at all times. If she diverted a little attention, he would be very unhappy. Jingwan vaguely knew that several of his close maids seemed to have found men for themselves. They first sent them out and then got married. In the current environment, it was shameless for an innocent girl to find a man for herself. Losing one's chastity before marriage was not tolerated. If it was known by others, she didn't know how much gossip she would have to bear. Those who couldn't bear it well might be forced to death. Jingwan couldn't imagine how wronged Si, Gu and Fu had been at that time. Therefore, to a certain extent, being the maids of the King of Hell was definitely the most miserable among all the high officials and nobles. Therefore, after they got married, Jingwan didn't specially prepare any maids for him. In fact, Li Hongyuan's maids were more to deal with trivial matters. Now that Jingwan's maids were here, naturally, there was no need to arrange another one. Si, Gu and Fu had not appeared in front of people before. Outsiders were used to it, so they didn't notice that Li Hongyuan actually didn't have any close maids. Otherwise, Jingwan would be criticized again. What about the others? Have they been confirmed? Li Hongyuan asked indifferently. Almost. I've already asked the nanny to deal with this matter. The agenda of the 3 letters and 6 rites still has to be carried out. The servants in the mansion don't matter. My guards are all of good background. As for the secret guards, they don't have any status at all. Li Hongyuan reminded her. Good and bad people shouldn't intermarry. If they were chosen, they still had to consider the issue of household registration. Did he still need to say this kind of thing? Even if she didn't notice, wasn't there still the nanny and the others? Jingwan glanced at Li Hongyuan. How much did he dislike the beautiful maidens by her side? After they get married they will still serve by my side. Even if they won't be by my side all the time like before, the nanny has already trained the candidates to replace them. Now they are already learning by their side. Jingwan couldn't help but say. Li Hongyuan glanced at her and naturally understood what she meant. The ones who will replace you now, can they have the deep friendship that you grew up with? In the future? With your husband here you can't count on them. Don't count on them to be the same as the ones now. Jingwan almost had blood on her face. She really couldn't understand. How did a prince in a feudal society develop this kind of clingy wife temperament? If it was in hiding gold, it was possible that the wife was strong and the husband was weak. But this lord, he could kill a bunch of people in minutes. He was so overbearing and powerful that there was no limit to it. This completely didn't conform to the character's attributes. Where did it come from? Although this attribute was annoying, it was also a sweet annoyance. And Jingwan was just curious, so she didn't want to get to the bottom of it. Since they wanted to celebrate Jingwan's birthday, it was natural to give instructions early. As the star of the birthday, there was no reason for her to personally handle this matter. However, the people in Jin Wangfu were all very capable. Now that Jingwan's prestige in the Wangfu had already been established, even without Li Hongyuan, they would still take out 120% of their energy to do it perfectly. What's more, Wang Ye had personally instructed that if it was done well, there would be rewards afterwards. However, if there were any mistakes, they definitely wouldn't have a good fruit to eat. With Gong Momo in charge of the overall situation and controlling the cards, Jingwan continued to be idle until she was moldy. She could only continue to paint, take care of the flowers and plants, and be lovey-dovey with Li Hongyuan. These days it was so leisurely that it made people want to beat them. The Wangfu's invitation was also sent out early. As long as there wasn't a problem with the brain, presumably, they would leave the 2nd of February empty. If they chose to do things on that day, they would consciously advance or postpone it. After all, they couldn't not give face to Jin Wangfu, unless they completely didn't reach this level. The Wangfu of each Wangfu would hold a birthday celebration, so it wasn't surprising to receive an invitation at this time. They just needed to prepare a congratulatory gift and nothing else. The surreal painting that Jingwan painted for Li Hongyuan was finally completed. Perhaps she really spent too much energy on it, but in the end it basically achieved the effect that Jingwan wanted. Although it didn't reach the level of a photograph, it was infinitely close. However, if such a painting was framed with paper, it seemed a little out of place. When Jingwan was thinking about what material to use for the picture frame, someone came to the fu from outside. Zhou Shuang was having a seizure, but it was a difficult labor. It seemed that things weren't going well. Zhou Shuang was married to the son of the Imperial College's chancellor. The Imperial College's chancellor belonged to the more noble kind. Moreover, in the Qiyuan his rank wasn't very high, so it wasn't easy to invite an imperial physician. Moreover, a life was at stake, so they couldn't delay it. They had no choice but to ask Jingwan for help. Jingwan became anxious all of a sudden. Without saying anything, she directly asked Mu'an to go to the Imperial Hospital and invite the best gynecologist and pediatrician to immediately rush to the Imperial College's chancellor's house. There shouldn't be any delay. Mu'an naturally knew the details of Jingwan's friends before she got married. He didn't dare to be negligent, so he took out his speed to sneak people to the Wangfu. However, it seemed that God was deliberately against Zhou Shuang. The two gynecologists went to the palace. It was rumored that there seemed to be good news in Emperor Lu Cheng's harem. Mu'an really didn't know what expression to use. He could go to other places to snatch people, but he didn't dare to go to the palace. Moreover, Lele was already an emperor at this age, but he could still have an imperial concubine pregnant. It was simply an example of the vigor of a dragon and the vigor of a tiger. It was the proof that he was still vigorous despite his old age. Mu'an had no choice but to rush back to Jinqing Wangfu. Jingwan, who was originally anxious, became gloomy after learning about the situation. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and appeased Jingwan's anxiety. Let Gong Jiu go first, at least to ensure that there won't be any accidents. I'll go to the palace. Even if something happened in the palace, Li Hongyuan could also take an imperial physician with him. Jingwan was startled. Logically speaking, her husband would never care about this kind of thing, but now, in the end, it was for her. No matter how unhappy he was because she had ideas about other people, when something really happened he could support her 100% and help her. With a husband like this, what else could she ask for? Yuan, thank you. Li Hongyuan chuckled. This husband will accept it. Remember to prepare a thank you gift when you go back. A word of thank you is far from enough. He gently pinched Jingwan's nape, hinting at something that couldn't be too obvious. Okay, I'll give whatever Yuan says he wants. Li Hongyuan's expression was cold again. I don't usually see you so generous. Chapter 460. On the way to the palace, Li Hongyuan already knew which concubine was pregnant. It was none other than Wei Xianfei, the former Wei's princess Yi Ning. According to the time, it was not the first time she was pregnant, but at some time later the two of them slept together again. It was normal for Wei Xianfei to plot against a child in order to settle down. But Lu Qingdi, who slept with the wrong person at the wrong time and lost face, should be very unhappy. Under normal circumstances he would not sleep with the wrong person for the second time, but Lu Qingdi did. No one believed that it was a coincidence. If there was a second time, there would be a third and fourth time. As for how many times, probably only some people in the Jingshifang and some people in the harem who paid close attention to it knew. For Li Hongyuan, not to mention that Lu Qingdi now had a concubine who was pregnant, even if there were 10 or 100 more he would not care. But it happened to be Wei Xianfei, when Lu Qingdi missed the imperial noble consort deeply. If Wan knew, she would be angry again. Many men, no matter how affectionate they were, did not prevent them from seeking pleasure with other women. Lu Qingdi was probably a typical example. He might feel ashamed and angry at the time, but after that nothing happened. Wei Xianfei was a beauty and she was raised to be delicate. Moreover, the first time she slept with Lu Qingdi she was so wanton. Even if the hymen in her body was still there, she must have tasted the taste of love. She might even have been specially trained by someone. Who would do such a thing to her, a princess of the first wife? According to some of the words and deeds of the former Wei's eldest prince, one could infer a thing or two. Therefore, for a woman like Wei Xianfei, unless it was a man with a firm heart, a man who was not greedy for pleasure, or a man who was not fond of beauty, after tasting her once, it would be difficult for him not to touch her a second time. Therefore, as long as Wei Xianfei had the heart, she did not expect any favor. She just wanted to have sex with a man, which was not too difficult. Li Hongyuan entered the palace and Lu Qingdi was still in the Iha palace. So there was nothing to avoid. When Lu Qingdi learned that Li Hongyuan wanted to see him, he was not only surprised, but also felt somewhat guilty. Because of this, his initial joy could not help but fade a little. He hurriedly asked someone to call him in. Li Hongyuan was the first man to truly move Wei Xianfei's heart. Although it may be because of his excellent and perfect appearance, her heart was truly moved. She had already prepared herself to be a concubine, but in the end she didn't get what she wanted. Especially since the other party had never looked at her directly. It was normal for her to hate him because of love. Under such circumstances, he suddenly stood in front of her. It was also his first time stepping into her palace. She subconsciously placed her hand on her lower abdomen. She suddenly felt the panic of betraying her beloved. She was worried that he would misunderstand. He was worried. However, all these complicated emotions disappeared the moment she saw Li Hongyuan. That man still did not see her. How she was, whether she was pregnant with someone else's child, it had nothing to do with him. The complacency of achieving her goal was gone. Only strong hatred was left. She unconsciously clenched her hand on her lower abdomen. There was also a dull pain in her abdomen, but Wei Xianfei did not feel it at all at this moment. Old Six, why did you come to see me at this time? Lu Qingdi acted like a monarch and a father to cover up the strangeness in his heart. Son congratulates father first. Perhaps in a few months, son will have another younger brother. Although he was a little embarrassed, he was more happy. His concubine's pregnancy was the greatest affirmation of his imperial body. It was good to be old but strong. The longer he sat on the throne, the better. However, Lu Qingdi's good mood did not last long. Because this matter would obviously make his wife unhappy, and Li Hongyuan would inevitably make his father unhappy. Therefore those emotionless eyes stared at Lu Qingdi. Regarding the establishment of the imperial noble consort's altar, can you choose an auspicious date to start construction? This topic was completely unexpected. Lu Qingdi did not react for a while. Logically, this was not an urgent matter. There was no need to ask to see the concubine. Then Lu Qingdi suddenly woke up, especially when his son's cold eyes swept over Wei Xianfei's belly. No matter how stupid he was, he should have understood what was going on. His Momo was still wandering in the world. Was she by his side most of the time? Luqingdi could not help but shiver. Every time before he rolled with Wei Xianfei, it seemed that because he had looked at Momo's portrait for a long time he could not sleep. If Momo happened to be by his side, how sad would she be? Seeing Luqingdi's stiff body, Li Hongyuan was like an ancient well without ripples. Because of the imperial noble consort, he was able to live again and then get what he wanted. Therefore he wanted to protect her. However, her emotional problems were not within his consideration at all. What kind of entanglement she had with his father, the emperor, had nothing to do with him. Imperial father, this son needs to use the 2 imperial physicians. Please allow it. Because his heart was too weak, Luqingdi could not wait for his son to leave. He waved his hand, allow. Without asking for the reason. Thank you, father. Son will take his leave. The 2 imperial physicians who pretended to be in the background were still retreating. Li Hongyuan directly turned and left. His behavior, to put it seriously, was offensive. However, in Luqingdi's eyes, it was his son who was angry. On the day of the emperor's birthday, his son saw how he reacted when he received Momo's portrait. Then he slept with another woman and was conferred the title of imperial concubine. His son must be unhappy now. Li Hongyuan took people out of the palace. He directly ordered people to take the imperial physicians and send them to the imperial college. As for what would happen to the 2 imperial physicians, sorry, but don't expect the living king of hell to care. Li Hongyuan returned to the palace. Jingwan was anxiously waiting for him. When she saw Li Hongyuan, she hurried to greet him. Ah Yuan, how is it? If it were not for her status, she would have rushed over personally. In fact, it was not that she could not go. However, if she went, not only would she not be able to help, but that family would also be busy serving her. That would be purely adding to the trouble. The imperial physicians have sent it over. What could be done had been done. Next they could only wait for the results. Seeing that Jingwan could not sit still, Li Hongyuan's expression was a little gloomy. However, he could not flare up now. He sent people over to report immediately when the results were out. However, they waited for nearly 24 hours. This night, Jingwan did not sleep well. Of course, she was not the only one who did not sleep well. She did not sleep well, so Li Hongyuan naturally followed. His face could not be any darker. Then the news finally came. The child was finally born, but the mother's body was bleeding profusely. She was saved, but her vitality was greatly damaged. It would be impossible for her to recover in a short time. Moreover, she was afraid that she could not give birth again. Moreover, the child was restrained in the mother's body for too long, which was not good. It was not known whether the child could survive. This situation seemed to be a great blessing. Jingwan's heart was still heavy. She asked Nanny Gong to open the storeroom and selected a lot of good medicinal materials to send over. As long as the child could recover, it would be fine. Even if she could not give birth again, she would not let her suffer as long as she was alive. However, the child was in the womb for too long. She was afraid that there would be no amniotic fluid, which would cause hypoxia. In the end, the child would suffer from anoxic cerebral palsy, which would be devastating to Xiangshuang. For Li Hongyuan, giving birth was just a matter. Although it was dangerous, he did not take it seriously. However, after listening to Jingwan's details, his eyes narrowed slightly. For other women, no matter how many of them died, it was not a big deal. But for Wan, Li Hongyuan was thinking about the possibility of not letting Jingwan have a child. When the libation lord received the things sent by Jingwan, he naturally thanked her profusely. Then, seeing so many good things, some people would not be able to see them in their lifetime. Naturally, they could not help but be greedy. They held the things in their hands and did not want to put them down. Seeing this, Nanny Gong was very clear about these things. Naturally, she hinted a few words. Was these things more important? Or was your husband's future more important? You must think clearly. Although Jin Wangye had no power or influence, but to block the future of some people, it was also an easy matter. Nanny Gong looked at Zhou Shuang's husband again. Wang Fei Nyang is very concerned about your wife. After all, after Wang Fei Nyang entered the capital, she only made friends with a few girls. If it were not for her status, she would probably visit them in person. Wang Fei Nyang knows that you are a person who values friendship and righteousness. Don't disappoint Wang Fei Nyang's expectations. In the future. Her unfinished words were clear to everyone. Nanny Gong took her leave. The Libation Lord's family had different thoughts. However, as long as they had a little brain, they should know what to do. Chapter 461. In reality, Jingwan had indeed suffered a lot. She had toiled for an entire night and then spent the entire day lying in bed listlessly. Her small eyes were like knives, flying towards Li Hongyuan's body. However, a certain person's skin was too thick and his body's defense was too high. Not only was he not affected at all, he even looked refreshed. Jingwan even suspected that he was like a demon who plucked Yin to nourish Yang. His complexion was unbelievably good, just like that human-shaped medicine that made people's legs go soft. Originally, the maidservants by her side had never had any thoughts about him, but at this time, they couldn't help but blush and quickly scram even further away. Jingwan sometimes really wanted to say that it was a good thing that he had restrained himself outside. Otherwise, who knew how many hearts would have been broken and how many girls would have done shameless things. Sometimes she would feel sweet in her heart, but then she thought about how her waist was about to be broken and her legs were like noodles. Even with her physique, she could only imagine how miserably she had been tormented. Because of this, her heart was filled with despair. Li Hongyuan sat on the bedside and looked at Jingwan, whose entire body was covered by the blanket. Only the top of her head could be seen. He reached out to pull the blanket away, but Jingwan held it tightly and said in a low muffled voice, "Scram, scram as far away as your heart can. This princess doesn't want to see you right now." Li Hongyuan slightly raised his eyebrows and curled his lips into a smile. "Scram as far away as my heart can? But this husband's heart is with Wan Wan." Wan Wan's meaning, "Are you inviting this husband to scram on top of you? Did he have to be so vulgar?" Jingwan almost vomited blood. He was really too inexperienced. When facing this person, whether it was dissing him or flirting with him, she would always lose miserably in the end. If she ever won, it was definitely because the other party had let her win. Moreover, no matter what kind of opening it would always end in a certain color. Probably not many people could cultivate such a skill. Li Hongyuan reached out to pull the quilt on Jingwan's head again, but he still couldn't pull it down. Li Hongyuan wasn't annoyed at all. He held his chin and said calmly, "Look, Wan Wan is still so energetic. Can I continue to do something? After all, she is my wife and I have to take care of her more or less. However, if my wife doesn't need it, then I don't have to worry too much, right?" Jingwan immediately lifted the quilt, revealing her naked body. Her fair skin looked a little pitiful, but it also revealed her boundless lust. Her decadent look caused a certain snake-like beast to become restless again. However, Jingwan was completely like a dead fish. She was listless and did not realize it for a moment. Her gaze was still courting disaster and landed on a certain beast's unspeakable part. "Can you still get hard?" Before she could finish her sentence, Jingwan was slapped in the face. It was the middle of winter and there were several layers of clothes. They were thick to begin with and there was an obvious bulge in that area. Jingwan looked up in shock. "Are you really human?" Li Hongyuan saw it clearly, and he was also quite clear about her unfinished words. He smiled faintly. "Wan Wan, what do you think?" She thought she wanted to die. He was indeed a beast. Li Hongyuan saw the obvious fear on Jingwan's face and couldn't help but laugh. He reached out and stuffed her arms back into the quilt, tucking the quilt under his chin. The pleasure of having intimate relations was all about pleasure. If she was afraid of this matter, what fun would there be? In fact, last night was already about the same. The reason why he had such a reaction was completely because he had a natural reaction to her and he couldn't help it. Li Hongyuan touched her face. "I won't disturb you, but you should eat something before you sleep. Don't harm your body." Jingwan obviously breathed a sigh of relief, and the words "that's good" were clearly written in her eyes. "Do you have something to do today?" Although he usually tidied up very carefully in the prince's residence. "And I still need to make the final arrangements for the imperial noble consort. I'm going to write a memorial and submit it." Jingwan nodded. "Have you already decided on the start date?" "I've already sent people to look at it. It's estimated that imperial father's people will look at the date on that day. However, I'm afraid that someone will make things difficult and the date might be brought forward." Speaking of this, Li Hongyuan's eyes seemed to be covered with black fog. Brought forward? If it was a good date, someone should look at the earlier date. However, even if the person who made things difficult wanted to bring forward the date, they wouldn't choose a bad date. They wouldn't be able to get past Luqingdi. Her mind raced. The date brought forward is the 2nd of the 2nd month? Li Hongyuan nodded slightly. Knowing what he was worried about, Jingwan smiled indifferently. The 2nd of the 2nd month is fine. It's not a big deal. What I'm worried about is whether the time will be a little rushed. It's fine if the location is close to the capital, but if it's far away when the imperial edict is issued, the local government will have to make preparations. If someone makes a move, it might cause resentment among the people. We already know the location. Don't worry, the situation will be under control. However, if they disturb your birthday, it will be unforgivable. It was the first time for Li Hongyuan to celebrate his wife's birthday. If it went wrong, it would arouse Li Hongyuan's anger. Jingwan secretly lit a candle for some people in her heart. Good luck to them. After that, Li Hongyuan watched Jingwan eat something and went to do his own things. Jingwan went back to bed and slept. As Li Hongyuan expected, the start date of the altar was set on the 2nd of the 2nd month. It was only his daughter-in-law's birthday. In Luqingdi's eyes, it was naturally not as important as the imperial noble consort. Besides, in his opinion, these two things were not related at all. The imperial edict was sent to various places immediately. Fortunately, the people of the Ministry of Works had already gone to various places and made preparations. Otherwise, it would really be a mess. Originally, although there were rumors among the people that the imperial noble consort was the fairy of the 9th heaven, it had nothing to do with them. Could they let the people have enough to eat and wear? One of the laborers in the family was transferred to do manual labor. This manual labor was outside of the normal manual labor. How could people be happy? However, when they finally heard the news, it was really a pleasant surprise. Although it was a manual labor in name, it turned out that they would be paid. Moreover, it was 3 times the pay. Not only that, they would have 3 meals a day, 2 of which were dry and full. There was also fat meat. For many people, they might not even see a bit of meat in a month. Many people never knew what it felt like to have a full stomach. This was like a pie falling from the sky. Moreover, it was clearly written on the imperial edict. Therefore, they did not have to worry about the government acting one way and doing another. In this way, the people who were originally complaining all rushed forward. After all, many families had more than one able-bodied laborer. Even if they didn't want to be paid, they were very willing to do it based on the daily meals. Unfortunately, this time the people of the government became serious. They didn't need to be fierce. Each family only had one able-bodied laborer and they didn't want him. This time, between brothers, between father and son, they all started to fight for this quota. The people who originally wanted to cause unrest all thought that Li Hongyuan was too cunning. They beat their chests and stamped their feet. Before they were done being angry, they started to sneer when they found out about this situation. Wang caused discord between father and son and brothers. If it was serious, it could even cause someone to die even if there was no such thing. They could also do this kind of thing, so this kind of shit, they didn't believe that Wang could still clean it up. However, these people couldn't laugh for long. However, the next day the government issued another notice. Father and son choose the son, brothers choose the elder. If they schemed against each other because of this matter, once found out, they would be invited to stay in prison for a few days. Moreover, if there was a similar matter in the imperial court in the future, the family would no longer have the chance. Subsequently, several examples were caught in various places. For ordinary people, prison was definitely one of the most taboo places. If they went in, no matter what the reason was, their reputation would be ruined. They would be spurned and unable to raise their heads. Therefore, the effect was very good. Even if they were unconvinced in their hearts at most, they could only talk about it with their mouths and didn't dare to do anything. Luqingdi, who had been a little nervous about this matter, breathed a sigh of relief after he learned about the situation in various places. Although it was for the sake of his most beloved woman, he didn't want to be a fatuous emperor. However, Luqingdi had mixed feelings about his son, who had presented the memorial and considered the matter thoroughly. His son had always done things beautifully. If it weren't for the fact that he was the heir to the throne, there was no need to even think about it. However, because of his outstanding performance, Luqingdi began to feel a taboo, especially when the courtiers kept praising him. He didn't want his 6th brother to have thoughts that he shouldn't have because of this. That's right. Recently there were many people praising Li Hongyuan. His momentum had greatly surpassed that of all the other princes. Now that things had developed to this point, Who would believe that there was nothing fishy about it? Li Hongyuan hadn't been to the imperial court all this time, but he knew the details of this matter. Jingwan also knew about it. Jingwan was a little worried because of the momentum. Li Hongyuan didn't care. It's just praising before destroying it. It's not worth mentioning. The method isn't old-fashioned as long as it's useful. Li Hongyuan, who was writing something with his head lowered, looked up at Jingwan. Wanwan, don't worry. We'll deal with it when it comes. It's just a small matter not worth mentioning. It's good that you know it in your heart. I just don't know who is involved this time. This is one trick after another, one after another. It looks like they won't stop until they achieve their goal. It's just those few people. There's nothing to think about. They're just worried that I'll threaten them. It's just that if it's too big, won't the fact that you're the son of a ghost be exposed? Wanwan, you can rest assured about this. Except for Imperial Father and Imperial Concubine Su, everyone else who knew about this matter is dead. I think Imperial Concubine Su also told Li Hongming that if the matter was exposed, Imperial Concubine Su would definitely suffer. Even if the fabricated version was that Imperial Concubine Su died, the Emperor on the throne would be well aware of it. It would be a slap in his face. Imperial Concubine Su doesn't have the guts, and Li Hongming isn't stupid. Of course, if Imperial Father no longer has the ability to punish anyone, it's another matter. But even if it's really exposed, it won't change the final outcome. Since only Imperial Concubine Su and the Emperor know, then how did Prince know? It can't be that they told you, right? Jingwan was curious. It can't be that you were born with it, right? Born with it? That's a good excuse. The implication was that it wasn't the case. But it was obvious that he didn't want to tell her the real reason. Jingwan clicked her tongue and didn't pursue the matter. The Emperor should be summoning you soon, right? Probably. Li Hongyuan said carelessly. Speaking of which, these people are really energetic. They can't even take care of their own affairs, yet they still seize the opportunity to scheme against outsiders. None of them are tired of it. Having power in one's hands did indeed bring a lot of convenience and benefits, but was it really that important? Perhaps because of her previous life, Jingwan didn't understand it as deeply as those people. If they can achieve their goal, no matter how tired they are, they'll probably be happy. Throughout history, not many people who have sat on the throne have lived long lives. It's not that they don't work hard. This is known to all, but it still doesn't stop countless people from wanting that position. They can do anything, they can give up everything, anything. Jingwan was surprised that a certain someone could see through it so clearly. Then Yuan, your husband still wants to live to 100 years old with you. Jingwan was speechless. But when she thought about how a certain someone planned so many things, she knew that he was probably busier than the Emperor. But in her eyes he was idle all day long. So she didn't need to worry about him working hard. In this way she didn't need to worry about him being tired. There was a knock on the door of the study. Master, there's a message from the palace. They want you to go to the morning court tomorrow. Li Hongyuan didn't respond, and the people outside quietly retreated. I thought that the Emperor would summon you alone, but now he wants you to go to the morning court directly. What does he want? He just wants your husband to see with his own eyes how popular your husband is now. He wants to see if your husband will become arrogant because of all the flattery. You don't know who you are, you don't know what you're capable of. You also want to fight for the throne. Jingwan was disgusted by such methods. She might as well have suppressed him directly. If he didn't give him any hope, then he would have made him despair to the very end. Why did he have to use such a method of giving him hope and then ruthlessly smashing him down? This was his favorite son. A father like this could only be sad. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan. Fortunately, her husband wasn't the kind of person who could be manipulated at will. He also didn't have any feelings for his old man. Going to the morning court on such a cold day was definitely a very torturous thing. Although it was warmer now, it was still far from enough, especially in the morning. Li Hongyuan took his time. He didn't plan to enter the palace early and then wait for the morning court to start. When he entered the court leisurely, the morning court was about to end, and the ministers had almost finished talking about the things to be reported. Luqingdi rubbed his temples and cursed in his heart. It should be known that the frequency of his catchphrase in front of Li Hongyuan was getting lower and lower. However, he still had to curse from time to time to feel satisfied. Luqingdi wanted to stop him outside, but when he thought about his purpose and thought about the bad temper of this bastard, If he really stopped him outside, he would definitely turn around and leave the palace. Come in. Li Hongyuan, dressed in the imperial robe of a prince, came in unhurriedly. He was handsome and elegant. No one could compare with his appearance. Every time he did this, people would sigh in their hearts. How could there be such a perfect person in the world? However, when he spoke and acted, all the good impressions would be shattered in seconds. It was really heartbreaking. Ken pays respect to Fu Huang. Long live Fu Huang. No need for formalities. Lu Qingdi was a bit weak. Compared to others, his feelings were the deepest. On one hand he was gratified, and on the other hand he was distressed. On the other hand he hoped that he would be outstanding, and on the other hand he was afraid that he would covet the throne. Lu Qingdi naturally praised his son as well, saying that he did a good job in building the altar for the imperial Gui Fei. As soon as his voice fell, the ministers echoed one after another, praising Li Hongyuan as if he was rare in the heavens, unparalleled on earth, a dragon steed and phoenix chick. It seemed that compared to him everyone else was trash. First, this time's matter was indeed done well, and it wasn't an empty promise. Second, the money that was distributed all came from Jinqing Wang Fu, but it was under the name of Lu Qing Emperor and the entire imperial court. Maybe they could even get some benefits from it. Third, they raised Jinqing Wang high up. Now the emperor was afraid of these things. Once they were rejected by the emperor, then there was nothing to worry about. Therefore it was only a few words, but it was naturally exaggerated. Seeing that Lu Qingdi's face was obviously gloomy, some people thought that they had achieved their goal and spoke more energetically, but they didn't see their own master pinching people's faces. As the saying goes, going too far is as bad as falling short. Lu Qingdi wasn't a fool. How could he not see the intention of these people? They didn't see that some of the ministers whose expressions had changed slightly didn't care at all. They even twirled their beards from time to time. Could it be that these people were also planted by Jinqing Wang? It was just that these people were in the limelight for a while and forgot themselves. If they continued, they were afraid that Jinqing Wang would be fine, but the others would suffer. Some of the people who held the right to speak hurriedly stood up and cut off their words. They also suppressed Li Hongyuan's reputation. And those people who were talking non-stop just now seemed to have reacted. Cold sweat faintly appeared on their heads. They quickly returned to their ranks, lowered their eyes, and didn't dare to speak again. Li Hongyuan, on the other hand, had the same expression from beginning to end. There wasn't the slightest bit of complacency from being flattered. Lu Qingdi faced Li Hongyuan. Lao Lu, this time's performance was excellent. Jin wants to reward you. What do you want? Imperial Gui Fei is Urchin's birth mother. Doing something is what she should do. There is no need for Fu Huang to reward her. Those are two different things. What do you want? There's no harm in saying it. Fu Huang really wants to reward me? Golden mouth and jade words. Lu Qingdi said so, but his heart was somewhat anxious. He was really afraid that he would ask for an exorbitant price. After all, this evil creature had done things that he couldn't do. So, Fu Huang sent people to various places to find 100 kinds of exotic flowers and herbs for a Ken. Don't alarm the local government and don't disturb the common people. Li Hongyuan said lightly, sounding really impolite. Lu Qingdi's expression was a bit subtle. 100 kinds of flowers and herbs, it really wasn't a big deal. However, to be so considerate of the common people, this son wasn't he? Lu Qingdi's expression didn't change, but his heart was already full of twists and turns. Are you asking for this for your wife? Many people in the capital knew that Jingwan was good at and liked to raise flowers and plants. Even some important officials in the imperial court would fight for the flowers and plants in her hands. Is there anything wrong? Li Hongyuan was very indifferent. It's not that there's anything wrong, but you are a dignified prince. Every time you open your mouth you talk about your wife. Have you ever considered other people's feelings? Especially the one sitting on the throne, who is your father. As a son, facing his son in front of his mother can cause trouble, let alone in front of his father. That's pure love. What a good-for-nothing. Not really. You really dote on your wife. Lu Qingdi's words seemed to be mocking him, but also seemed to be happy to see it. Not really. After all, it's what she deserves. I'm a big man, how can I hide it from her? Oh, Lao Lu, you sound like this matter is all thanks to your wife. Lu Qingdi was interested. Otherwise, even if you think that it was Urchin's idea, you still need to have some basis. Iken grew up under the sun of heaven. What I ate and wore were the best things. The people I met were either rich or noble. Does Imperial Father think that Aken would know what the lives of ordinary people are like? Father, you should feel lucky that you didn't say something like, why not eat meat paste? If you don't know the suffering of people, how can you know what they need and how can you know what kind of trouble it will cause? No matter how thick-skinned I am, I can't take this kind of credit. After all, it can't withstand scrutiny and can be exposed easily. Li Hongyuan's tone was calm, but there was no lack of sarcasm in his words. However, no one could say that he was wrong. Lu Qingdi was a little embarrassed. Well, he really didn't think of this before. However, even if he didn't think of it, didn't the entire imperial court think of it? In an instant, Lu Qingdi started a conspiracy theory again. I don't know what those people who keep flattering me are thinking. Are they going to jump out and accuse me of relying on women after I take credit for this? Hearing Li Hongyuan's words, Lu Qingdi felt more and more that this was the case. Therefore, he wanted to mess with Li Hongyuan but failed. He even got himself into trouble. It was a typical case of losing the wife and losing the soldiers. Your Highness, your words are too serious. Princess consort and you are husband and wife. Whether it's her credit or your idea, it's normal to take it on your head. After all, there are some things that a man can do but a woman can't. Elder Lu of the cabinet stood out and said unhurriedly. As soon as he said this, many people agreed with him. Li Hongyuan sneered. I'm sorry. I'm a man. I can't do this kind of thing. Besides, what's the use of this credit? It's for the sake of Princess Consort's mother-in-law who passed away, for the sake of my father and the imperial family's reputation, and for the sake of the people's lives. I don't want to make trouble. At this point, this matter couldn't be forcefully blamed on Li Hongyuan. After all, no matter how much he said, it was actually nonsense. The most important thing was that Lu Qingdi didn't want Li Hongyuan to have too high of a reputation. Luo Aiqing is a good girl raised by your family. The Luo family's upbringing should be a good example. Luo Peishan hurriedly stood out. Your Majesty, you're too kind. It's all. Lu Qingdi waved his hand. Luo Aiqing doesn't need to be so modest. Zhen has seen how Lao Lu's wife is. Don't say that she married into the imperial family. With this evil creature's virtue, it can only be because he is close to ink. Lao Lu's wife is able to keep her heart and constantly admonish this evil creature to restrain himself. This is all because of your family's good upbringing. Come, Jin Wang Fei is virtuous and virtuous. He fiercely praised her, not to be outdone by the praise that some court officials had given to Li Hongyuan. Then he bestowed a lot of things, and the flowers and plants that Li Hongyuan wanted were also granted. Then he gave Luo Peishan a lot of things as a reward. Smart people knew that Lu Qingdi was trying his best to exaggerate Jin Wang Fei's contributions and weaken Jin Wang Fei's reputation. After all, no matter how high a woman's reputation was, it would not stir up a storm in the whirlpool of power. At most, it would be the benefits that the emperor bestowed. Why would they care about that? In fact, this was also the purpose of the other prince's successive calculations. Although the process was different, but in the end it was all the same. Now outsiders only knew that Jin Wang Fei was benevolent, but did not mention Jin Wang Fei at all. However, according to Li Hongyuan's thinking, this was also what he wanted. He really didn't need fame at all. This thing, no matter how high it was, in fact, it couldn't affect who would sit on the throne. Unless it was the kind of person who cared a lot about fame and hoped to become a wise emperor. Otherwise, there really weren't many people who would work hard and be careful for this. As the saying goes, water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat. However, unless it was extremely cruel and made the people unable to make a living, there weren't many uprisings by ordinary people. More often it was the ambition of the superior. For women it was different. A good reputation was more beneficial to them, especially when it was praised by the superior. For example, now if someone said that Jingwan wasn't good, a sentence, the emperor said that she was good. You mean the emperor said that he was wrong could block that person's mouth. So, in the end it was a happy ending. Jingwan listened to the servant girl's retelling of the rumors outside and couldn't help but blush. Ah Yuan, isn't this too much? Those things, weren't you the one who brought it up? That's right, but then it's fine. Why bother so much? If you're thin-skinned and embarrassed, just pretend that you don't know. Jingwan could only maintain her silence once again. Forget it, there was no need to think about those useless things. The next day was the second day of the second month. The night before, the entire Jin Wang Fu was brightly lit and began to prepare for their mistress's birthday. Although they were busy, they were all full of spirit. However, Jingwan wasn't that busy. She still did what she needed to do. After eating breakfast, she changed and dressed up. The servant girls did their best to dress her up beautifully without losing the dignity of a Qin Wang Fei. After dressing up, she turned in a circle in front of her lord husband. Women dress up for their sweetheart. Jingwan now also had this tendency. However, Jin Qinhuang today seemed to be somewhat lacking in interest. He held the book seriously and didn't look at Jingwan's body. Jingwan expressed that she wasn't happy. Then Li Hongyuan finally gave her a charitable look and faintly opened his mouth. If you don't want the guests to wait for you to be in the room and unable to leave, then be a bit more reserved. Don't seduce this husband. Jingwan almost choked. This psychopath, animal, hooligan. And said that she wasn't reserved? Seduce him? Just let him look at the clothes and makeup, that's all. Only a pervert like him would have a brain full of yellow waste all day. So, it could be said that the living king of hell was completely afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself, so he picked up the book to read and calm his heart. Jingwan bluntly slapped his face. Then she angrily walked out. Li Hongyuan rolled up the book in his hand and propped his chin up. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a pure smile. So far he was very satisfied with his days. Even if there weren't a few little bugs jumping around in front of him and looking for trouble, but the flaws couldn't obscure the beauty. After sitting for a while, Li Hongyuan got up and casually threw the book in his hand and walked out. Finding Jingwan, he took her hand. Wanwan's birthday is today. How about looking at the birthday gift this husband has prepared? Sure. Although Li Hongyuan had given her too many things, she was still looking forward to her birthday gift. Giving a gift was naturally to cater to her preferences. The things that Jingwan liked were really simple and not simple at the same time. From Jingwan's point of view, her husband must have gotten her some exotic flowers and herbs from somewhere. Jingwan guessed wrong this time. Following Li Hongyuan to a courtyard at the back, a cat walked elegantly towards Jingwan and the others. It wasn't afraid of strangers at all. It even squatted in front of Jingwan and meowed. Although it was pure black, it was small and looked chubby. One of its eyes was blue and the other was purple. It looked elegant and noble, but its size was unbelievably cute. Jingwan, who had a soft spot for fur, couldn't help but feel that it was adorable. She bent down and wanted to pick it up. Li Hongyuan used a little strength and pulled Jingwan back. What did this husband say? Wanwan seems to have ignored it. Jingwan was a little stunned for a moment. What and what? Then she finally remembered. So, even though you've given it to me, I can only look at it and can't touch it? Li Hongyuan chuckled. His smile was like a spring breeze, but the words that followed were especially cruel. If you hug it, this prince will get someone to make it into fertilizer. Wanwan, think carefully. Since you've given it to me but won't let me touch it, you might as well not give it to me, Jingwan complained. This man was simply making trouble for no reason. Since that's the case, this husband will immediately send it away. Send it to be used as fertilizer. Jingwan gritted her teeth. She wanted to bite this bastard to death. Jingwan felt that she would probably have an unlucky year. On the day of her birthday, she had only opened her eyes for a short while, and she had already been angered by her husband twice. Jingwan could only look at the little kitten in front of her. A certain perverted psychopath could do what he said. She'd better not act rashly and let the little fellow lose its life in vain. However, this little fellow had obviously gone through strict training. It was the first time it saw Jingwan. It seemed to be very close and attached to her, but it didn't directly pounce on Jingwan. It was obvious that it wanted to please Jingwan, and it was also in line with the idea of plotting against the king of hell. Li Hongyuan held Jingwan's hand and continued to move forward. Although he had expected that he would give her more than just a kitten, Jingwan knew that someone must have spent a lot of manpower, material resources, and time on this. There were common cats and dogs of various breeds. Although they were all cubs, they were of different sizes. Some were slim, some were round, some were lively, and some were cute. Then there were lions, leopards, mountain leopards, foxes, deer, and so on. In short, cute and beautiful animals could be found here. What surprised Jingwan the most was a snow-white fox. There was a kind of fox in the snow mountains in the north. It was snow-white and had a strange fragrance. In the valley of the summer palace, someone had mentioned this kind of fox. Now it was actually in front of her. According to Jingwan's knowledge, the population of the fox was very small, and it was even more difficult to catch. It lived in the north, in the cold areas, deep in the mountains and forests, and was covered by snow all year round. It could be said that there was no such fox in the Qiyuan and it was extremely precious. Jingwan couldn't help but touch its fur again and again. It was soft and smooth and the touch was really admirable. At this time, Li Hongyuan didn't refuse, but when Jingwan completely ignored him he said, Wan, if I use this white fur to make a collar for you, it should be very beautiful, don't you think? Moreover, it is said that the fox's fur will still have a strange fragrance after a few years after its death. It is its good fortune to give it to you. When Li Hongyuan said the first sentence, Jingwan retracted her hand. Damn this narrow-minded man. In addition to these, did I Yuan prepare any other gifts for me? Li Hongyuan looked at her quietly for a moment. Wan, for a little beast, you scolded me in your heart and changed the topic with a seductive smile. This kind of beast, I think it really shouldn't be kept alive. Jingwan felt that maybe she should be mentally prepared for death. https://11/11807/10342228. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.